Good afternoon, everybody. How's your post-lunch slump? So I'm going to try to shake you out of it a little bit. I was asked to speak about this because back in 2012, really, not recently, I wrote a blog post about book citations. I'd written a book chapter for a book about scholarly and professional publishing. Was very excited to write it. I like to write. Writing excites me. I like to do that, as you can probably tell by the fact that I write a lot. And so I wrote this book chapter and was very excited to submit it. The editors really liked it. They barely revised it. I was very proud of it. It went into a book. And then the book came out. And the book came out. And my chapter was one of 50-some chapters. And there was actually a book review of it in Learned Publishing that said, there's this one chapter in here you should all pay attention to. And it was mine. But if it weren't for that, it would have just been melted in. So in any event, the blog post that I wrote was actually taking some research where researchers found that journal review and journal empirical articles had about the same level of citations, but book chapters had about a third in Google Scholar. And this is kind of interesting because it jives with the experience of being a book chapter author, and this is not the only chapter I've written in the past. And so I just speculated in the blog post a little bit why this might be. There might be multiple reasons. I always think there usually are multiple reasons. So one of it is an access issue. Well, that's pretty much been debunked around journal articles that citations are driven by access. They tend to be driven by quality and reaching the right audience, but not by access. So I don't think with books that's the issue. It seemed more of a packaging issue. The fact that you have a package that the chapter disappears into and it's subsumed. There's no such thing as an ISCN. There's no IS chapter number. There's ISBN, so the package subsumes it. In the journal world, the article's the package. That's the package of knowledge, and the next article may or may not be related to it at all, so you really can't, in a particular issue, say that the articles are actually related, except in a very, very broad sense, but they aren't edited together like a whole corpus of knowledge. Books tend to be broadcast and marketed once, not on an ongoing monthly or serialized basis. It's interesting to look back to the 19th century, and I've always speculated that this is going to start happening more and more, but those people got serialized novel publication. They actually published them first as articles in magazines, and then they put together one or two other really great chapters and said, okay, now here's the book. Sherlock Holmes was published that way, and Oliver Twist, and all sorts of other things. So you kind of wonder where the serialized book is, especially in an age where subscriptions and repetition and signal are so important. You also notice book authors increasingly going to a serialized route. So you have Freakonomics. We'll both publish Freakonomics and more Freakonomics, but we're actually going to start a blog on the New York Times that is going to be much more popular. I think Motley Fool did that back in the day. They published a book and they had a little bit of a website, and then all of a sudden they went off and started this own serialized content business. So I think there's actually a lot to be said for regular publication pulses, and especially in a networked world, because you're fighting for a lot of attention. If you only have one pulse, you tend to be swept under the waves. When I started at JBJS, we were a monthly journal. One of the first things I did was make us twice a month. And that's because in the internet age, if you're monthly, you're quiet, and that's not good. So you also get a bigger metadata footprint if you're in a journal, I think, because you not only have all these archives typically that are sweeping along traffic and reputation and community, but it's going out again regularly, updating itself regularly. And if you're an article in that rapidly moving river, you're more likely to catch people. So there are more pointers, I think, to serialized content. There's other serialized content. There's editorials. There are commentaries, things like that. It's a little bit harder, I think, for books, especially as book reviews are disappearing from a lot of journals and from a lot of places in general. So there aren't very many book reviews, but there are a lot of people still commenting on articles. There are more journal indexing services. Full stop. So there's your metadata footprint again. And there's just a broader culture around journal articles of the article economy. People sharing articles. Articles are already broken apart for them. They don't have to get some sort of PDF of a book and try to break apart and upgrade their Adobe They just get one, they email it to everybody, or they print it out, and it's very contained. Easy to do, relatively short, brief, granular, easy to get to. So I think there are a lot of reasons for this. But the takeaway point here, which hurt, but I think it's kind of true, is if you write a chapter for an edited book, you might as well write the paper and then bury it in a hole in the ground. So the next speakers, I think, are going to tell you about what they're doing to make sure that their books stay above ground and do better than zombies who have come back to life and are now stalking people for brains, but are actually living, breathing embodiments of intellectual output. So I'm going to turn it over to Rich and let him introduce the next speakers. If you have any questions.